I'm Joe Ruminski, for those of you who don't know. I've been a member of Carolina Mountain Woodturners now for about 9 years, been turning for 11. Took my first class at John C. Campbell, went home and said, honey, I want to buy a $300 mini lathe. She says, oh, that'd be great. And then I took another class about a year later, and I came home and said, honey, I want to buy a $3,000 Powermatic. She said, well, okay, but no more classes. And I'm a retired teacher and principal of 30 years and wanted to do something when I was done. After taking the wood turning class, it was downhill from there. And I teach wood turning at Acorn, Campbell Folk Art School, and a couple others, hopefully next year. Travel all of Eastern U.S., well, not all, but most of Eastern U.S. doing demos, working with the AEW, and just love it. And to be able to teach wood turning is the best of both worlds to me, with my educational background. I appreciate Ed putting me up last night. I went out and had a very nice dinner, and Ed and I averaged 2 miles on our jog this morning. I jogged 4 and he drank coffee. So I guess it's an average of 2. But it was very nice to spend the evening with Barbara and Ed. Very enjoyable. So thank you all very much. I like to start each one with a safety tip. And I want to ask you, we turn off this light for just a second so you can see the effect. How many of you use steel wool in your shop? How many of you have DC chargers and battery chargers and whatever that you have on top of your workbench? Yeah. This is all it takes. And if you have any finish on the steel wool, it will ignite. And I learned that the hard way. I threw a piece of steel wool on the workbench. This plug was laying beside it, and instantly I looked over because I just finished putting wax on with the steel wool. Oh. The wax was ignited and flames were about this high on the bench in less than 30 seconds. Make sure you've got a fire extinguisher in the shop. Be careful what you do with that steel wool. It's oil coated, and that's what catches fire on it. And that's what keeps it from rusting, so it'll be there next time. So that's my safety tip for the day. I try to do that every demo, or at least one safety tip. And I know most of you have been turning, but I want to start with some very simple things. We're going to work our way up to more difficult as the day goes on. Tool sharpening, or tool nomenclature. I have a true wood gouge here. Of course, your cutting edge, bevel. On spindle work, I cannot think of any time in spindle work that you don't rub the bevel. Now on bowls, that's not necessarily true. The flute, and you'll hear me say, I'm opening or closing my flute. And what I'm meaning is if you were looking at this on the lathe, opening the flute, it's as open as it can be right now. You could walk through it if it was a door. If you're closing it, you're rotating it left or right. I'll say close it to the left, close it to the right. And as I'm doing the demo, you actually hear me say, I'm closing the flute or I'm rolling it to the right, just so we have a common terminology as we go through this. You'll hear me say I'm raising the handle, but I'm to get the cutting edge to contact. Now, that's raising the handle to get it to cut, but if the flute's tilted that way, that's raising the handle. It's pushing it towards the flute. And that gives us a common terminology there. Sharp tools are useless, throw them away. No. If your tool is not sharp, don't bother to use it. You're wasting time and tearing up good wood. When I'm turning at home, every 10 minutes my tools are sharp. Maybe 15 if it's a soft wood. I want to talk just a little bit about sharpening. How many of you have a very grind system? Only one? What? Yeah, I've got it right here. And my very grind is no longer a very grind in that this is locked in place. It's been pulled down with pliers so you can't move it. It's got CA glue embedded in the threads. It's got CA glue along here. I want that same angle every time I go. Does it matter? No. That angle can be off a little bit one way or the other. It just takes me longer to find it. That's the only difference. I was in one demo and the gentleman says that angle has to be 49 degrees. Well, he went to lunch, and while he was at lunch, his angle changed to 46 degrees. He never noticed. I won't tell you who did it, but he's in the room. You know, we get used to where that angle is, and it makes it really easy to find it. And that's why I keep this the same. It keeps this side angle the same. And I use the same grind on my bowl gouge as I do my fingernail. The only thing that changes is how far this bar is away from the wheel. The closer it is, the sharper this angle is going to be. The further away it is, it's going to make the angle less. And my bowl gouge, I run at about a 45 degree. My spindle gouge, I run at about a 60 degree angle here. Now, many people, and this is a good example, have their little marks on the bar here to show where to set the stick. And that's great if you never clean the wheel. When you clean the wheel gets smaller, and if you leave that line there and you use it, it's going to change the angle on your tool. And I use templates. I use templates for a lot of things. Template drops in here, gets up to the wheel snug, pushed up, tight, slide it out. Then no matter what the diameter of the wheel is, I've got that same distance, so that angle is the same every time. And again, it's not critical, but when you start using that tool, you know your body gets trained. Okay, it's here, and if I go from here to here, it's going to be cutting. And it just makes life really quick and simple.
Say 45 degrees for the fingernail?
For the bowl gouge. Okay. The fingernail grind is not, it's the same angle, and all you're doing is, to get the fingernail grind, you're lowering the tool so that the wheel grinds down the side more. That's what makes the fingernail grind. The angle has nothing to do with it. And I use a long side grind on both my tools, bowl gouge and spindle gouge. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we use the tool. Keep your stones clean. Otherwise, you just build up metal in the stone and you're rubbing metal on metal, or you'll get a little concave groove in it from holding the tool in the same place. And then you get these weird shapes on the side of your tool that cause catches, and we really don't want those. So get rid of anything that's going to hinder your turning with that. Any question on sharpening? You should have a somewhere. This wheel's nice and clean. Don't see it. It comes with a little T-bar. You got one. And it's got diamonds embedded in the front. Always use this with the plate. If you freehand it, it's going to bounce enough, and then when you put the tool on, it really exaggerates it here, and you slide it back and forth real lightly, and it grinds away the stone and gets you a nice flat surface. Okay, anything real quick on tool sharpening? Interrupt me at any time, but it does not bother me. You get from 40 to 60 on the coarse, and 100 on the other one at the highest. I use 100 on the fine grind just for that real light touch up, and I do all the major sharpening on the other one to get it close to shape. Tormac is a wonderful machine, and I use it for my hand tools and a lot of other things. But my bowl gouges, I sharpen them so often, the setup time to me is not worth it. To get that extra fine edge, because in about a minute it's gone anyway. So not knocking the Tormac, but for me this is quicker and easier. If you freehand, that's an art in all its own.
It's cheaper too.
It's much cheaper. Yeah, I'm sorry. The freehand is a real good way to do things. When my tools get about as short as this one is, pretty soon I'll start freehanding it because I've run out of room for my jig, and it works just as well. And there's some things you can do with that we'll talk about in a little bit also to get rid of some bevel differences. The first two projects in particular, ones that I do with kids, I probably teach over 150 kids a year, different whatever, and it's a ball. To find center, I don't know how many of you do it this way. Lock your pencil in place and move the wood. dot right in the middle. The reality is, if it's off a 1/16 of an inch, after it's in the lathe, it doesn't matter. It's going to be the center. So that's not a big, major thing. By using the pencil locked in place, if your piece isn't perfectly square or perfect rectangle, you're not going to find center by going corner to corner. I use a step center with kids. I also use the safety center. You all know what a safety center is? Okay, safety center is what we used to use in the tailstock as a drive or as a dead center, and it's just a cup with no bearing on it, and just the pressure of it is all that holds it there. So if you get a major catch, it just spins. It stops the motor from driving. The piece just spins in it. So if a kid or an adult, either one, does something too aggressive, it just stops the wood from turning and doesn't fly out and hurt anybody. The step center with light pressure will do the same thing. The pin in it is spring loaded. Is if I'm willing to have the piece hit me in the face, I'll wear goggles. If I'm not willing to have it hit me in the face, I'll wear a full face shield. Today I won't wear a full face shield because you couldn't hear me if I did. Now, I've got very little pressure on the step center. I used to have a sharp tool. And if I put too much pressure, it simply stops. So then you want a little more as they get more confident, and if they get way too aggressive. And have to get comfortable with what you're doing. Lathe speed. When you're rounding out a piece, not there. One of the things I see people do often, put their fingers up here on top to feel. That pinch zone will really bite you. And normally there's enough metal there to really hurt. So when I put the tool on top, you heard the chatter. That's just a real quick, safe way to tell, or turn it off and look. We're still off there a little bit, not enough to matter, so we'll do one more pass. And then we're going to make just a very simple snowman Christmas tree ornament. The faster the lathe is turning, the easier it is to turn. And of course, when you're turning slow, what happens is the tool hits this corner, and then as it comes around, it has a long time to move in towards the center. So when it hits this corner, it's taking a big chunk. The faster it goes around, the less time it has to move in, so you get a smoother, cleaner, quicker cut. Roughing gouge should be probably the one tool that's not used enough. People have the concept of the roughing gouges for roughing things out. Drop back and get the bevel rub on it. It actually does a fairly nice finish cut. We could probably start sanding that with 180 or 220. But you've got to get the bevel rub in order to get that kind of finish on it. Now when I do a snowman ornament, I like to mark things out. It's going to be the top of the hat. It's going to be the bottom. It's going to be the brim. That's going to be the head. And the shoulders will roll into the head. Then I take the parting tool and lay it out. spindle gouge. On the spindle gouge, I use the side of the gouge more than I use the tip. Roll. The hat's going to be a straight cut in. To it. Head, we're just going to start on the corner, roll the thing around. You know what, I messed that up. So we'll start on the other side. We can do this. Wait too deep in my curve. There's going to be the brown. See the tool in the camera? Yeah. Good. There's only 3 cuts you can make on a lathe. That's a straight cut, which is what I'm doing now. You can do a bead, what we're doing here. I'm going to do a straight cut, slide in here. Now we've got the top hat on the Snowman. And we'll do another half bead. We'll do his shoulders. I want to get rid of a lot of this material and tape it down, and I'll change over to my hole gouge. You can also use your roughing gouge if you prefer. Gentle cone. That's what happens when you get too much pressure on the rock. On spindle work, you always go from the high side towards the center, so that the grain is pushing against itself. And that's a matter of how much you want to do. These are ornaments I like to make for small children. The only finish I put on them is paraffin wax, so they can stick it in their mouth. It's long enough. They can't swallow it. And we'll change back over to our spindle gouge and finish off the bottom. Stop, sand the whole thing out. I'm not going to do any sanding today. If you want a private lesson in sanding, I'll make those arrangements for you. I like to put a little band on them. This is nothing more than a guitar string. You never want to hold this with your fingers. You want it wrapped around something. catches and pulls that wire across your finger, it will lay it open. The nice thing is it burns as it goes so it doesn't bleed a lot.
Another experience.
I didn't say that. Then you put 2 little eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and 3 buttons down his vest, and you got a little snowman Christmas tree ornament. You may take that home and finish it. They're quick and easy. Kids love them. Again, I do those for small children. Where's your knockout there? No. Knockout board, Dave? Here it is. This next one is a fun project. This is a little ball and cup toy. And it's quick and easy. It's also done with all safety spurs. The blank is, here, you don't play with that, just don't hit each other with the ball. Blank is pre-drilled. This is number 2 Morse taper. And I like templates for a lot of the things I do repetitively. This is my number 2 Morse taper. And I gave Ed a set of handouts that can be copied for your club to have and put on the web. This distance is the distance from there to there. This one is the size of the top of the taper. This one's the size of the bottom of the taper. So now I've got this, pencil mark, slide over, and I know I've got my taper right, and it simply goes in. Then this is automatically centered over the taper. So now I've got the hole centered and everything, and that is so cool for kids because there's no measurement involved for them. Again, if they get too much pressure on it, it just quits spinning unless you really bear down on it.
So you just drilled that hole in the blank for that to fit into?
Yes. Now, when this is what I did at AEW this last summer. And here's a story stick for the kids. The first mark, let me get it round for I know how deep the hole is. The hole's between 1 inch and 1 1/4 inches. This is 1.5 inches. So when I'm doing this with kids, I'm going to mark it. Now I know if I do anything up above there, I'm going to cut the top of it off. The thinnest I can make my spindle anywhere is that thin. And I tell them that's the thinnest they're allowed to get their hand on. This on the other end is to make the ball. If it's 1 inch in diameter, which we'll get to in a minute, then it's going to be 1 inch wide. So this is going to be the top. And I'm using a bowl gouge for this. I just lost my 1 inch mark, but that's all right. kids get really uptight about, well, my ball's not perfectly round. It doesn't matter, it's a game. What is really fun is to make two of them. One with a ball that's 1 1/8 inch in diameter, and the other with a ball that's 7/8 in diameter. One will fit in the cup and the other won't. And you make sure you give the one that won't to your friend. I used to keep 2 or 3 of these on the coffee table. And we had a study group that would come over from time to time. Sometimes you get lucky. And they'd pick them up, start playing. Nobody ever bothered to check to see if the balls were the same size. That's twisted. Now we come back. The spindle gouge does not like to make deep, heavy cuts. So I like to have a mark where I can cut forward.
Mark that for the ball. You were measuring with around it, and now you're doing the
use it for the width. So the width and the height and the width are the same. It's more likely to be a ball. Now your eyes will tell you that is not the same width as it is height, but it is. Your eyes play silly games on you. We're going to talk about that a little more today. Get that out of the way. And again, nothing more than a bead. If you're normal, one side of your bead will be flatter. If you're practiced, then it will almost be round. I'm going to go for the almost round. Now the reason people have trouble, and normally it's the side that their body's on that tapers out more like a pear, is because their body's in the way, so they push the handle this way, which makes the tool cut pear-shaped instead of round. So what you do, you stand a little off to the left, and when you roll that tool, you let it roll towards your body. If your body's in the way, it stops it and causes the pear. And we're going to stop there. I'll call that absolutely wonderful. Use this for a little bit. If you got a lot of wood to get rid of in a hurry, it works really well. Bowl gouge works really well. Bowl gouge is not only for bowls. I would leave it about that diameter. The reality is, it's a toy that you spend hours making, and you love it more than they do. And they're going to throw it on the floor, they're going to toss it to their buddy, and it's going to get bounced all over the place. So don't get this super thin. Only a woodturner cares about how thin things are. Nobody else in the world does. You do want it to have a nice little bit of a feel to it. I like a little bit of a taper here. For an adult, if you want to go thinner, that's fine. Now I've got a little bit of room up here to play, so that's where I'm going to get my details figured out and start doing. And this is where you can use your artistic creativity. I like these grooves because in one of them, that's where I'm going to tie the string to the ball. Now as woodturners, we know we can do all these neat little grooves and coves and everything else. We get carried away with that and actually overdo many good pieces, where simplicity would have been better off. And then we come up here. One final cut. A nice clean sharp tool so it's nice and clean. I want to clean this edge up. Hope I don't catch. be your own worst critic. That's better. One other thing I've seen people do that is really anti-productive is they sand a piece and then start tooling it again. The sanding grit from your sandpaper stays in the wood. So then you're running sanding grit over your tool, and it dulls them very, very quickly. I really don't like that chemical. I like that better. And you can make these in miniature size, charge twice as much for them, call them executive toys, and they sell. And go ahead and turn it down, part off the ball, and you're good to go. You may take that home and finish it, sir. I was hoping we had some children today because I bought one I was going to give away. Well, we'll give that away in the auction, that'll work. But I use these drive spurs a lot. I've done some major flower weed pot holders. You can make these up to 2-3 inches in diameter on the end of your wooden spur. And just nothing more than a taper. The plans for the taper will be in the handouts. The next project is very similar. Any questions on that one before I go on? Or any question on anything? Good afternoon, sir. This is an Acorn ornament project, and I'm going to mark my little template here so I know how deep it is. Yeah, this is different diameter. Again, it's using the same process, just a different diameter. And this again is Christmas tree ornament, or something a lot of people hang them in windows and call them fly houses or gnat houses or whatever. And all I've done is the same things I did on the other one. This is going to be the cap of the Acorn, and it's got the hole pre-drilled in it. And just very quickly, I want to round it out. This piece of cherry is 120 years old. It came out of a barn. There was a beam in a barn, actually the roof beam. The barn was at least 80 years old when they found it. When they tore it down, I happened to know that, but I have that. What do you want to do with it? I don't know. Change over to my spindle gouge for the detail work. I'm just going to start with I'd better check. We will extend this up just a little. In fact, I went through it. I can see the line. Yeah, we're okay. Whoever sands this one, sand lightly. All my cuts are practice cuts. Constantly watching that tool roll, constantly watching, am I getting the finish I want? because if you start doing, well, it's okay to be sloppy, then you'll get into a sloppy. I am going to go ahead and part this one off. Remind me when I'm done to give you one of the dry spurs. There's the crown for my Acorn. And dummy me, I've got another one of these at home, but I forgot to bring it, so we'll just bring this one out. This one is already pre-drilled, and it's got the hole for the bird, and then the little hole for the perch. Do the perch a little later today out of a scrap of wood. So I need to get this down to that size. Where's my templates? And it's better to be too big than too small. Gluing that stuff back on is tough. I deserve it. All right. Now I know that that second hole, the small hole, is just below the bottom. I also know that on my cap, it should be a 1-inch hole. So if I make the top of this 1 inch, it's going to fit right inside the cap. I've got room down here to practice on my diameter. A little snug, not bad. This is also a good place to practice with a skew. How many of you use a skew? Out in your gardens, digging weeds, growing in a tree, squirrel? What I'm doing, I'm actually using this like a skew, rubbing that bevel. It's got the same angle at the top as the skew does. Beautiful job. It's a little more friendlier than a skew. find out where our holes are because I can't see them spinning. Round out the bottom. Again, if you got that bevel rubbing and a sharp tool, should be able to do very little sanding. Birdhouse. And everything fits. I mean, that's the neat part about it. A couple drops of glue, that's good to go, and a little bit will make a perch for the bottom. Put a little hanger on the top so it's nice and light. You don't need that?
I can make one.
For sure. I hate to shortchange you. You're all too quiet. Any
I
questions?
know. Quiet, I'm usually not this quiet.
Stay up
Hey, Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
With the use of compact, and is there a rule of thumb that you come not quite sanding it, you come down to that?
That I would probably start sanding that with 220. So it's going to be close enough, I'm not worried about it. And I use medium CA on everything. So if there's a little gap, it'll fill it. But you're right, snug's better than loose. You can always take more off, but it's hard to put it back on. Alrighty, next one, Christmas tree ornament. And one of my favorite, I think if I wanted to make a 100% living just turning, I could do it with Christmas tree ornaments. Right now I have an average of 100 Christmas tree ornaments, standing orders. That every year I change the finial. I can tell by the finial what year it was made. So people know that each year is a little bit different. They collect them. And once you start that collection process, and they say, well, just put me down on your list for next year. And I've got about 100 that I know that I want to sell every year before I even start, which is nice.
Chuck Richards right behind.
Okay.
On the wall. On the wall there, where the tools are.
Look
Below the
at
window.
Oh, below, okay. There it is. I used to be able to see. I took the time to go ahead and round this one off. I figure you all know how to round one out by now. It has a tenon on one side. I'm going to put the tenon on the other. And whoever put that tenon on didn't do a very good job. I need to talk to them after a while. Runs nice and true, I think, Russ. That's a Novichok? Big mark. When you have, if you've got square jaws in your chuck, you need to make sure that the face is always flat, that the tenon lines up with it. If the jaws aren't in touch with the top of it, it's going to come out. It's not a maybe, it's just a matter of when. Do that spin to make sure we don't tear up somebody else's chuck. I'd rather tear theirs up on that one. Now I'm going to lay out the Christmas tree ornament. I do enough of these that I don't have to lay it out, but for you to see, we will. You want 1/3 to be the top and 2/3 to be the finial. And I'm going to start, my thinking is the top is on the right-hand side now, or the tailstock side now, and the finial is in the drive. Because I'm going to hollow out the bottom half of it first. Then I'm going to turn around and put the top in and Chalices are fun. They're very quick to do. Well, you want me to make you feel really good?
Yeah.
The first time I did them, they were day projects.
So, that's it.
As much fun as winning this.
It starts at 3.5 inches in diameter, 9 inches tall, and goes down to 1/8 of an inch in diameter and 3/16 tall. They're fun if you let yourself enjoy them. People get real uptight about, I'm going to mess it up. It's okay, it's a tree, they'll grow more. It's okay to throw wood away. Most people in design work, we're going to talk about design wood, are so afraid to throw that much of it away. So they make, like I did on the hollow form, it's too tall, so it looks top heavy. I'd been better off to throw 2 inches away and have it look right. And I don't do, most of my work, heavy work is done with the tool up against me and I dance with it versus getting my arms tired. You actually have more control. I'm going to put a tenon on one end. I'm going to make my tenon a little longer than normal. If you would go ahead and take that off for me, please. Thank you. You do the outside shape first and then hollow. This one I actually do the hollowing first and then cut the outside to match it. Why? Because I like to. No. That's a smart aleck answer. I apologize for that. The real reason is we're going to make the outside ridge of this 32nd of an inch thick. So if I've got my inside shape done, it's easier for me to control the outside going parallel to it than it is for me to be going the inside out. Plus the pressure's in, and on a thin wall, in pressure is more stable than out pressure. Most things I do, there's a reason for it. Some of them I'm lazy. Again, I'm going to hollow it with the bowl gouge or spindle gouge. I'm going to use the other one. When you do the hollowing, slow it down a little bit. If it does catch and it's spinning in your hand, it's not going to carry your hand up. And start our giving here. I have to remember, I've got a lot of leverage on these jaws working way out here, so my cuts are going to be a little lighter than they normally would. There's my center, up, level, perfectly wood. A little deeper. I'm going to actually make the inside of my chalice a V. So as we taper down, we can taper into the stem. So we're going to start here and just, not with that one. And start pulling out. out of the way of the camera here.
That's better.
Again, I've got the handle further away so that I've got just a nice gradual curve inside there. And if you're going to sand inside that, now's the time to do it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I want to clean it up since we're giving it to the young lady in the back of the room who's smiling already. She's got faith I'm not going to cut it in half before it's over. I love that. Now, be careful about pushing it in too far with your finger. The chances of that paper catching and rolling it is really good. So if I'm going real deep, I'll get something under my finger in there. Still a little rougher than normal, but we're going to go on. I know if I go too shallow before that, I'm in trouble, and I actually prefer to use a bowl gouge. With this bevel and slide through, I can get a smoother, more gradual cut, and we're going to go very gentle. I'm only going to work this much of it thin. That way I've got wood back here to support what I'm working out front. We're still running nice and through. We're down to a fat 16. I don't want to sand that outside at all because if I do, I'm going to put grit in the wood and then dull my tool instantly. Now we're ready to finish shaping the outside. Go to the next. Now back to this point, it's already a 1/4 inch thick inside. So I know I can go ahead and start my taper in safely. actually spend more time looking at the top to see the shape and actually looking where the tool is. Okay, we're probably a 1/4 inch or better here, so I can taper that in a little more. Just that little bit made a difference in the appearance. I'm not willing to stick my fingers down that far with it spinning. Okay, we're good to go. And just speed up the process a little bit. Now, in a goblet or a chalice, the stem has to be skinny to look good. If it's heavy, it just puts the whole thing out of proportion. A nice, clean, crisp line. And I'm going to sand that just a little bit, because once I get the stem skinny, I won't be able to touch it again. I think I've got a little bit of chatter work in it. Bonnie Klein would be proud. Okay, now we're going to get into the real light detail work. And this is where your personal, this is where my comfort zone is, starts to take place. You've got to make a choice now. My choice is you want the cup of your chalice to be either 1/3 of the piece or 2/3 of the piece. If it's half and half, it will not look right. I want it to be 2/3, so I'm going to make a fairly small stem. My bottom of my chalice is going to be here. We're going to do this real nice, light, gentle touch now. What you have to remember is your eyes will see things skinnier laying down than they are when you stand them up. I don't know what it is about the human eye, but it's this way it's much skinnier than when it stands up. When I'm laying on the floor flat, I look pretty good. When I stand up, the bulge shows. Clean this edge up so it's a nice crisp edge. Where you got to remember, you have to breathe. Now, that line is about the same size as that one, so I want to put a little line here on my chalice, kind of balance out with the other one, so we come here. I'm going to do a little bit of thick enough that you can undercut it. A little fuzz showing right there. Now this is a old Sears tool chair maker cowl, and I recut it, I reshaped it to get a real fine sharp point. It was just wonderful. Side by side cut. I make these out of green wood most of the time because they're thin enough, they dry without checking and cracking. Two last things. If you're having trouble with design, and this is what you want, and you can play with these a little bit this afternoon. A bowl shape, that's a bowl shape. Taller vessel, those curves are curves that are pleasing to the eye. And if I've done this piece right, it falls right in line. A lot of people have trouble with curves. They start a curve, and then they change the curve, and then they change it again, and it doesn't have a flow to it. And taking this and getting your eyes to see it. And I've been known to take the whole chuck out of the lathe, and set it up by the piece, and see, okay, yep, that line's matching. That's what I want. So that is one thing. The other thing to practice for curves is your French curve. Start with tracing it, then start with not tracing it, but drawing it. And that gets the mind and the hand coordinated to do it. And if you use those curves, it is a tremendous help to design elements. And then all day today, you've heard me talk about 1/3, 2/3. And really it can be 1/3, 2/3, 2/5, 3/5, 1.6, 1/8, whatever. And those are the numbers for proportions. And believe it or not, they work. If you change from those, change from them drastically, so it doesn't look like you tried to do it and didn't make it. And be very intentional about it. And I want to leave you one last bit of help. You need 3 people in your turning career. You need one person, and my wife plays this piece in my life. I finish a new piece, a new design or whatever, and I yell upstairs and I go, honey, practice. So for the next couple minutes, she's upstairs going, ooh, it's gorgeous. And then I bring it up and she goes, ooh, ah, it's gorgeous. And you need that encouragement. You need somebody who's that constant encouragement person. Or somebody can say, well, it may not be as good as you would like, but it's better than the last one you did. Then you need somebody that has a true, what I call artistic eye. Some people are born with it. I'm having to learn it. They can look at it and say, you know, overall, that looks pretty good. But right here, it's just a little bit flat or a little bit heavy. That they can critique those lines and curves and get them where you want them. Then you need someone that's a turner to look at that piece and say, you know, you got tear out in there and that's just not acceptable. Your tooling was wrong. They can give you that technical advice. Throw away the shell that says I'm hurt, because that's how you're going to grow, is to have those 3 people that keep pushing you to do a little more, a little better, and meet with them regularly. On pieces I have over here, I'm very critical of my own work. I throw pieces away now that 5 years ago I wasn't proud of. And I was telling Ed earlier today, I have a kindling pile beside the house. And neighbors know they're welcome to come and get wood out of my kindling pile. And I was throwing away bowls that weren't to my standard. One of the neighbors was picking them up and taking them to the flea market and selling them for $5 a piece. He'd dip them in stain, dip them in shellac or whatever, and he had a good little business going. And that didn't bother me till I found out he was telling people who made them. Because in our area, I've got a pretty good reputation for quality work. Well, as soon as he starts putting them out saying those are my pieces, that knocks the quality off my work because they were discarded. So now all my scrap pieces are cut in half before they go into the pile. But you're known by your worst piece. So as you improve, keep working, keep pushing, push yourself, push yourself, push yourself. I'm doing things now that 2 years ago I said I couldn't have done. Dyeing and coloring and burning, we'll talk a little bit about that with this afternoon's group. We're going to give you some options to try some different things there. I do a lot of it now. 5 years ago I said I'd never do it. Well, you know, it's another avenue that's just absolutely a blast. And I found out there is such a thing as ugly wood. And if it's really ugly, you got to do something else with it to save it. So whatever. So if you don't have any questions, I appreciate you coming this morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here. If you're